Hello and welcome back to another episode of Supercoach Insider. My name is Ben,
And I'm Swizz.
and just thank you for joining us. This is the strategy podcast where we sort of look at structure and strategy. It's the double S. We're back and big for an early preseason here. As always, today brought to you by splashvodka.com.au. Or socials as well, SC Insider 100. You can find us on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, all the audio platforms as well. So Spotify, Soundcloud, Stitcher, you name it. That stuff will be coming out shortly. This is exclusively for YouTube. So please do search, subscribe, like us, Supercoach Insider on YouTube. Swizz, it's very interesting. The Supercoach is open for those that have the early team picker. I've got COVID again, so I'm trying to get my spreadsheets up to date. I'm actually talking to the Jock Reynolds Supercoach guys as well. I think they've started doing some stats. I'm like, look, let's just try and come together, boys, because I'm about 13 teams down out of 18 as far as prices and positions and all of the rest of it. So it's going to be good spreadsheeting time. Swizz, how are you today?
Yeah, mate, I'm good. I was pretty crook the last couple of weeks. I know you've been traveling a bit bad as well, but yeah, back at work. Recovered in time for Christmas and then Boxing Day, which was awesome. Anybody who follows me on socials would have seen me out there in the centre there with our Austrian import Jiven. Me and her got to hold the Australian flag, which was a bit of a highlight for Boxing Day. So yeah, the body decided to get myself up right at the right time. So yeah, everybody knows I'm really into my cricket and that, and BBL Supercoach and Parkfield and everything to do with that, and to have that honour was awesome. It's been an awesome couple of months because of cricket. I thought the highlight of meeting Elise Perry was going to be hard to top, but being there on Boxing Day. But the other passion is footy and the Mighty Tigers and Supercoach, and it's great to be back. And it's not 2023 yet, but we're coming just that little bit early for our viewers. So yeah, mate, it's going to be awesome.
And it could be a great time to be a Tiger supporter too with your inclusions, and obviously Bolton signing an extension as well. So yeah, look, for me, it's COVID, man. I've got bad luck. It's probably because I bite my nails. Seriously bad luck. Mrs. went and the baby went and stayed at her mum's house. They're COVID free, so it's been really great. Jumped on that bullet. The bad thing is that I pretty much had to sit in the pool area, have Christmas breakfast. My missus and baby came and saw me through the pool fence. And then I was sitting up on the top deck at home watching, my sister, both my sisters and, all these kids and stuff use the pool, use the backyard, having a swim, playing backyard cricket. And I'm literally looking through the palings on what was Christmas Day. So I know you don't have to isolate anymore, but for me, I've got a 33-week pregnant missus, another baby as well. So you're kind of just trying to do those things that you can to keep your family safe. Speaking of safe, there is no safe structure, Swizz. So what we want to do is we want to get into...
I thought you were going to actually work into a Chris joke there with speaking that safe, but...
No, Chris,
See,
congratulations
I really should have a cardboard cutout of him, because I know he's usually there with you, but he's actually down here with me. But unfortunately, there's no surprise where he's going to jump over my shoulder, but I will be seeing the great man tomorrow.
And congratulations as well to Chris and his partner as well, Eliza, with their baby Noah. So he was talking about Noah, and I was like, who's Noah? Like, as a joke. Who's this kid? But congratulations to them. So hopefully Chris will get on at some point during this preseason. I'm sure he'll pop up when Collingwood's around, because he can't even get off the chats at the moment, giving Carlton players a whole bunch of crap about Collingwood beating them and knocking them out of the finals. So we do want to get into
safe structure, mate. Safe structure.
Structure. So first things first is we want to talk about the new bench rule, right? So you have the sub, and now you can pull this sub at any time, which is kind of what some teams were doing, but now it's a given. So for me, straight off the top of my head, there's two people that are going to be heavily now at risk or impacted by this. So number one, if you're a rookie who gets a game, right, you're guaranteed that they'll get on at some point now. So that means that if they're an emergency or that fifth player, whatever they want to call it, right, you are now at risk of them scoring low. So it's going to stunt cash generation. It's going to cause a whole bunch of issues. On top of that, who's going to go off the field? So if there's no injuries, someone's going off the field. So for me, there are two people at risk. Number one is rucks. So some teams might start with the two rucks. And as we saw already, it's like, oh, Mason Cox is now injured and he's gone off. And get a bit more run through the legs. So the big boys tend to tire a little bit, so they might start with a two-pronged system. Automatically, I'm thinking, Collingwood with Mason, also Hawthorn as well. Now, Hawthorn have, Reeves. They also got Meek as well from Fremantle, if they use him or not.
I think we had a bit of a chat about that and saying,
yeah,
is there many clubs that actually don't do the 2 ruck strategy now, and that like there's so many of them that have gone to that. And even like you look like Richmond with Nank and Soldo and that, and it means players like that are going to play, but they're going to play the 3 quarters and last quarter. Yeah, that run, unless outside of I think Sydney, if Sydney were to pick Will Gould, I think Longmire would still keep him on the bench in that sub
I think you're
vest.
right. He
But
can't play.
but outside of that, yeah, no, I think that's exactly what's going to happen. The Lions, like Darcy Fort, you guys brought in, I can see him being a big sub candidate if you don't have any injuries in that 3-quarter time, and be like, let's get some fresh legs on here. So I think there's going to be some good scoring for rucks. That'll be interesting for that number 1 ruck come the last quarter, because teams are going to be wanting to get that speed out there. But yeah, definitely that's your number 1 candidate. And who you got a second, mate?
Yeah, well, I just think it's going to stunt that second ruck sort of role. And it just might mean that first rucks as well might not be as prominent because they might have to share some of those duties for the at least first half of a game, maybe first 3 quarters. The only benefit is, I guess, last quarter scaling might help them. The other one is rookies. Rookies themselves, if there's no injury. So if there's an injury, then all's null and void because someone will come on probably earlier and that rookie might actually get a good run. But the other thing is rookies that may be fairly new to the game, they already have a fairly low time on ground already, right? And if they're not playing the best game, so if you had like a McDonald or someone from Hawthorn, maybe didn't have a great game, low time on ground already, they're like, well, you're only playing 50, 60% as it is at the moment. You're not really having a great game. So off you get, fresh legs on and go about it that way. So for me, it's rucks and rookies that are probably the biggest risk at this current point in time.
Yeah, and I think you might see some clubs there that last sort of 10, 15 minutes of a third quarter, those rookies, if they've got no real injuries, let them have a real spurt out there, knowing that, well, if we get through these next 15 minutes, that kid's coming off. It doesn't matter if they're spent. So you might get a slight little spike there, but yeah, that whole last quarter, they're not going to be involved.
Yeah, it just makes it interesting. And now, even if you're fringe best 22, there's a chance that you'll be either sent off or be the emergency and come on. And it's just, when you talk about pricing and Supercoach, there's they don't give a shit. If
Hmm.
you play 10 minutes, well, guess what, buddy? You get bugger all points.
We've seen it in the Supercoach BBL. Like, how are the Thunder, who made 15 a few weeks ago, chase a game none down, and I think everyone had Riley Russo from South Africa sitting at number 3, makes 0, down his value went, and that like, so it doesn't matter in what form of Supercoach game you play. If your player doesn't score but they're involved in that match, yeah, bad luck.
What about Bergman? 1 game for the year, -1 super coach for North Melbourne. So look, it does happen. That's my big concern. And for me, when I'm looking at structure and strategy, yes, if injuries and it's this whole balance because it's like, well, hey, this person's cheap, and everyone's like, oh, but they're injury prone. I'm like, well, no shit, but they're cheap, right? I don't need them to play the whole season necessarily. I just need them to play. And at least if you kind of go for players that should and will be best 22, I think that weighs a lot more than some of these speculation ones because I think we've gotten away last year a little bit. Sometimes you see their growth, get stunted, but generally you kind of before the sub rule and all the rest of it, you could rely on these rookies to really generate cash because if they played the whole game and they weren't really at risk of that. So now it's a little bit of a different scenario. That combined with the extra trades, combined with the boost, right? I'm starting to think that guns and rookies is probably getting faded out a little bit more. It's always the way you went. Whereas now I can see a lot more value going, okay, well, maybe there are some mid prices that, should be playing. So you might not maybe make as much cash necessarily. Like it might be a slower a burn. However, you can guarantee that they will play each week and you can guarantee that they're not going to get subbed off or be the emergency player and then have their growth stunted. And that's where those sort of nice, $200 to $300,000 player can really come in play because with the boost as well, you can get quite aggressive in turning that player into a premium rather than having to try and downgrade 2 rookies to another rookie who might not be very good anyway. So that's my original thoughts going into the season. And that's sort of where I sit with. So where do you sit with as far as looking at your overall team structure at the moment and your original thoughts?
Well, do you want me to like kind of run through it and then we can have a bit of discussion? Might be
Yeah.
the
Are
easiest
you
way to
guns and
kind of,
rookies, or are you going looking at value at this point?
mate, I always like to sneak some value in there. It's just about how much. I don't overdo the value. I still like I feel like nearly in each line outside the rucks, I like to have at least your two. Well, in the midfield is sort of your three more guns, but definitely a couple guns in there. Try to fit at least one value player, and then get this couple of the better rookies on field. So, for example, the defense there, Tommy Stewart and Dawson. They're the
Do you
ones
have
that sort
3
of locked
premiums or
in.
2?
So I've just got the two,
And
and
you've gone those 2? That's so
yeah,
funny. So have I.
yeah,
Literally Dawson and Stewart, because there's
Stewart,
so many speculative ones. I have toyed with Dacos.
yeah.
I'm not sure
I'm
with
seeing
the
he's popping up in a
inclusions.
lot of teams already, and that
Well,
I
it's because
always
it's
get worried about
value.
second year, but yeah, it is. It's
Yeah,
still
second
potentially
year,
value, but
he'll
yeah,
probably get more attention as well second year. I am intrigued if he gets, and with Tom Mitchell and stuff coming in, I'm like, okay, well, is he going to be on the back line where he might get some attention, or is he going to get a little bit more through the midfield? Um, like anything, we can be swung through the preseason.
yeah, exactly. So I think they just look good. Jackie Bowes is sitting there at D3. Um,
What?
yeah,
Oh,
from the
Bose, right. Sorry, sorry,
Bowes.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So
Sorry.
yeah,
I was thinking of the Melbourne guy. What's his name?
oh, the one I
Bowery.
didn't pick. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, Bose.
Yeah,
Yes,
Bose,
yes.
just because, obviously high picks gone to Geelong now. They're not picking him up for no reason. Obviously, they got a really good draft pick out of that too. But yeah, I think at the moment he's the value guy in the defence, and then you've got those cheaper defenders. So, but who have already played before, and Gota, McKenna, and Constable. So they're the ones on field just
Yep.
because they look like the best job security at the moment. Like Connor McKenna has only gone to the Lions because he must have been guaranteed that halfback spot. You would think so. Maybe he'll play one halfback with Rich on the other side, or maybe he's coming off the bench as that seventh defender. Charlie Constable, at some point you think he's got to be good enough to play, and the Suns just continue to lose players. And yeah, Goda's played before, so that's kind of what I was looking at. That I want to look. Usually, that's what I try to do. Sometimes, if there's not enough good defenders, I'll fit in the extra premium, and then that premium comes out of the forward line because every year we seem to pick up some forward rookies, and the defender rookies aren't that great, but at the moment they don't look too bad.
Okay, so you've
Yourself,
gone with
Devin?
like a 2-2-2 structure. So 2 premiums, 2,
Kind of more
I guess,
two. It's more two
two,
one
two,
two one
one.
three,
Yeah,
but
yeah,
the
okay.
three rookies are
But I guess
more
McKenna's cheap
premium.
enough that you would
Yeah,
say, okay, yeah, and
you
that's fair
would.
enough.
Yeah, at 167, he's a bit of a weird price, but we know what he can do. And Goda, yeah, maybe not the best at 192, but just because of his high pick and everything around the fact that he should get a lot of games. 192, it's not the worst idea. Dual position as well.
Yeah, interesting. So I've got Wilmont, but I'm not sure how McKenna and a few others coming
That's
back
the
in will
worry.
hurt
Yeah,
him. But again, I'll keep him in as a place setter. I'm not
yeah,
worried. You kind of put in some rookies; they're interchangeable at this point. You're going to change your team 1,000 times anyway.
exactly.
But I actually quite like these. We'll get into this in our individual segments as well. But I've gone like 2-2-2 with McKenna as a rookie. I've got Yo in and Bose
Mm,
as well with McKenna, Wilmont, Dean, and Gould,
yeah,
hoping that they'll actually get a game. We'll see. Again, interchangeable. And I've kind of gone a similar structure even in the forward line, like 2-2-2. For me, my original thoughts are to stack in my midfield because I think that's where a lot of the points are to be had. That's where a lot of the consistency and the captaincy scores are, especially that we can't rely on rucks this year. I think rucks
mm,
are probably the biggest problem that we will have all preseason. So for me, I'm trying to get some security, some less standard deviation, and I'm loading up like 5 deep if I can.
yeah.
And
See
I've gone
that's
five
will be
deep with
different. Yeah,
yeah, so I've
interesting.
gone 5 deep in the mid with Hopper, Ashcroft, Wardlaw, and Phillips on the bench. And I've just gone 5 consistent ones with Oliver, Neal, Tuke Miller, McRae, and Steele. Steele being a little bit of value. McRae should get some more time with Dunkley going. And then the others just consistency with a lot of 125, 130 plus scores. Um, that's my bulk of my money in my midfield. And then I'll just go into my forward line with the 2-2-2. I've gone Dunkley and Taranto because I think Dunkley's killing it. He'll be playing midfield, and Taranto has that value midfield sort of selection. And then Fife and McLean. I've kind of included McLean as that sort of mid pricer. I could go a little bit more expensive. There are some other $200,000 players that I am interested in. And then King and Comben and McRae and etc. on the bench. What
Yep.
have you got for your structure?
Yeah, so and I don't mind, like I'll usually try to pick the more expensive rookies at the moment because it's easier to go down than it is to obviously go up if they start firing. So midfield, I've only got the three primos in the moment: Oliver, Bont, and
Ooh,
McRae. Yeah, and because I always think the better rookies are in the midfield, and some value. So some that will probably change, but at the moment it's three.
3.
And a couple of people already know. I talked about this recently that I had a dream. Bont goes down first quarter of the first round, so he's a very much a place getter in my team because I think that may come true. I'm a bit worried about that because I think he was going to smash it this year. But then my next two are Tommy Green and Hopper. Most likely Green might go up to one of the other premiums, but I
Yeah,
just
so
think
if I had a way, I'd want
yeah,
Green in my team.
and that's the thing.
I honestly do, but I'm like, well, I'll just pay the extra 100 and get like a steal,
Yeah,
you know?
and
And
that'll be one of the big discussions, especially if he does in the preseason like he started the season last year. And then it'd be like, okay, can we save what's he at 534? So you're nearly saving 100k. He could put out
yeah.
those numbers again. And I know Abdul was big on him last year, and look how he started.
Yeah. Oh,
And
see,
no,
I'm
and no
looking to have
Taranto,
him.
no Hopper. That's
I
the
was
big thing
wanting
now.
I was wanting to have Hopper up to Green. And I was
Yeah,
like, how do I do it? I was like, if I go Elliot Yo down to a rookie and then go similar to you with, Bose as my third and then McKenna as my fourth, then all of a sudden I've got enough money to go Hopper straight to Green. And then I'd have a 6 deep midfield, which would be absolutely sensational.
yeah. So and
Um,
then it goes Ashcroft, and then I've got Cunningham and Blakely. Again, it's mature age guys who, if you'd hope that they get first crack, but we find a lot of those times those boys get injured and stuff. So then that's where the structure kind of changes a little bit. But
so that's why Will
yeah,
Phillips for me, he had what glandular fever and then got injured. He at 158, he's cheaper now by
yeah.
like
So
50k than his
he's the
draft year.
one which is the same price as Cunningham.
And
I think he's
yeah,
5k cheaper. So
and
that
Johnson as well for Frio should have got a game. Sin for Port Adelaide only played
Yeah, I've
like
had
one game
Sin
as a
in and
sub.
out, and that the couple times I've played with it. So we've
Interesting.
there's a couple guys there very interchangeable, but I think I had Cunningham in because once Carlton's injury started happening again with Walshy and I think Hewitt and stuff, I was like, well, he's back in the side and that if he's fit. So not that he's going to get a midfield role, but it just points are going to go somewhere. But yeah, I think a couple of those boys you mentioned will end up
Well, Port also had
easing me
like,
over the preseason.
Motlop retired, Mays and Skinner and stuff get
Yeah,
delisted. So they did rate him enough. I think he just had a bit of bad luck. So
yeah,
hopefully he can make his way in the team. But again, 30k cheaper than what he was last year, and he's still a first round pick.
yeah.
So they're the ones that I'm kind of looking at a little bit more if I can.
Where
Um,
and then where we get the real difference is my forward line because I've got at the moment, and this is where one most likely comes out, but Dunkley, Cornelio, Taranto, Darcy, Cameron, and then Fife at F5.
oh, right. Okay. So what's your
Yes.
ruck line then? If you got
So
Darcy Cameron in your
I've
forward
got
line?
English and Darcy with the Samson Ryan as the loophole for Darcy Cameron. I think Darcy Cameron plays well. Cox will be out there, but
Yeah, yeah.
he's the number one ruck, and what's he 460?
Yeah,
Um,
465, including
yeah,
a forward eligible. And
yeah.
he finished on a lot of hundreds.
Yeah,
So I think there is definitely a
he's
lot of meat on the bone.
and I'm not worried about Brody Grundy now this year.
No, see,
It's
here's the
that's
thing. I've gotten Dunkley, Taranto, Fife, McLean, and I've got a lot of value. I guess I've spent more on my midfield. You've spent
mm,
more on your forwards. I don't think Cornelio's as sure of bet as he was previous years. And he always has that tendency to drop some low scores. So I'm kind of probably waiting to pick him up on the dip
he's the one that probably comes out for maybe like your McLean or somebody like that, and
to
that
free up
money
some
goes
cash.
into
Yeah,
that
yeah.
midfield as that extra guy. But for
I
now,
hate I hate
it's
the ruck lines.
But
I
that's
hate
why at
them.
the moment I was big on Darcy Cameron last year once Grundy, like I think Chris and I was it that went early on that. And English and Darcy, as good as they are, and most of those rucks are, they just worry me about durability. So I
Yeah.
think that he is just the perfect player sitting there going, at any point, I'm not like you guys had with English last year. You're just not stressed because you can put your forward into your into your ruck at any point.
Yeah, that makes sense. I hate the ruck line, and to the point where I feel like if Segler is going to be the number one ruck for Geelong, and because he didn't really get his body right for most of the year, he was fine at the end, but then Geelong kept winning, so it was hard for him to kind of get in. There is still that risk with Stanley, I guess, lingering over his shoulder. I'm kind of wanting to be tempted by someone that's 350k in the ruck. At the moment, I've got Cameron as my R2, similar to what I had this year, just gone, where I had English in that sort of role, kind of as a place setter, because I wasn't sure on set and forget last year. it's even more so now. I don't want to lock 2 rucks in if I'm going to have to trade them both out because I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Um, and I've had, Marshall in that side because I think, with Ryder going out, he might be able to improve. But I
He was
also,
the biggest lock until King went down injured.
yeah, now I'm like, okay, well, he'll go forward, and then
Because I'm
you
worried
have
about
your
that. Was it
Campbell.
Hayes and Campbell? Because they've got Campbell there, depending on how Hayes came back from that injury he had
Yep.
last year, they might, go Campbell, play Marshall more forward. And that's where this sub rule goes. Okay, do they get to 3/4 time, no injury, Tom Campbell off your car, Marshall, you've got
Yeah.
the whole last quarter to yourself. But do I
Yeah.
really want to have 3/4 of Marshall playing majority forward?
No.
No.
And so who I've got in as my R1 at this moment? Grundy.
Oh, wow. See, I actually had Mark Bluesharves in at one point there
Oh,
and that,
that's
and
even worse than mine.
yeah, that's the thing. I was just like, "No, I need a natural ruck."
How much do rucks suck?
Oh,
And here's the thing. So this is where the Grundy thing comes in, right? Because obviously he was only played 6 games, so there is a discount, average 103.5. So it's like okay, right? But Gorn specifically said because like, oh, aren't you worried like getting Grundy in? And Gorn's like, I'll play any other role. Like I do not care. He can come in and be the number one ruck because we know Gorn can go forward, Gorn can go back. Gorn might do the first tap out of a centre bounce and then go behind the ball, sort of like what Stanley did in the grand final for Geelong. And then Blycarves or whatever would run through and take the next thing forward or whatever would be happening. Um, so I actually think there's a little bit of meat on the bone for Grundy. I think Gorn's going to probably take a more sacrificial role because he already said to get Grundy there that he will play it, anything else. So I think Grundy might actually have the lion's share and then be able to move around elsewhere. So I don't know. It's all going to depend on the preseason for me. But when I
oh,
look at the ruck line,
100%, yeah.
Riley O'Brien could absolutely, win me over, but I doubt it. Darcy could, he's doing great things apart from grabbing someone's neck in a marking contest. But again, practicing forward. So it's like, great, you're a ruck, but you're practicing your forward craft at
Because
training. So
Luke
good job.
Jackson's coming in now and
Yeah. Well,
how much
Meek's
time
gone,
does
which
he
helps.
play?
But
But, yeah, Jackson's better than Meek.
yeah,
So,
and English I like, but again, he's now 580. So I'm like, well, and again, do they play Sweet or someone else in that sort of lineup? Wits is good, but I'm not paying 605,000 for a guy that ended up averaging 80 for the back end of the year.
yeah.
Um,
The left field one's Natanui.
yeah,
And that's what was it 2 years ago, 3 years ago when people jumped on him and got rewarded because he came back off that injury. He probably does suit with the extra sub guy and that because they always have that option of resting him more because then they can bring on fresh legs and stuff because he does spend quite a bit of time on the bench. But they sold ruck West Coast. They're one of the few teams that you very rarely see the second ruck go in. It would probably be Oscar Allen, just a little bit of a breather here and there. But yeah, I think he could be that real left field one. I didn't mind Nank, but he just doesn't get the big scores. Grundy's at a great price. GWS, you just don't touch with their rucks because each week it should be Bruce, but each week they seem to change who their number one ruck is. So
yeah.
I've heard a couple of people tempted by Draper because he kind of is the number one guy at Essendon, but he just doesn't have that pedigree of high scores.
No,
Which
he gets
is
goal of the year, but then that's about
yeah,
it.
that's it. So
Um,
yeah,
but
I would.
can we agree that it's hard to set and forget your rucks though,
Oh,
because it's
for
so
sure.
open, and you never know. Like someone might come through like Gorn did, and
Yeah.
just absolutely tear it up. Where you just kind of going, holy crap, when like Oscar McInerney could just come out and just be absolutely looking like he's the best thing ever for the year. Rowan Marshall could be doing the exact same thing. We're like, well, we can't get rid, we can't play anyone else because of what's going on. So or Riley O'Brien has that potential with his high ceiling. He could absolutely go on a heater.
Right
Um,
age, everything like that.
yeah, so
It's
they're the things that I just don't like, especially if we don't have Gordon and Grundy like we used to. I just don't like setting in 2 rucks and just hoping that they're one of the two.
yeah.
I'd rather have that flexibility on how maybe have a Cameron there and then kind of go, okay, well I've got one, so at least if I'm wrong with that one, then I can just trade
Hmm.
instead of trying to be wrong twice.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so that's
Yeah,
interesting. On the update, Alex Carey, first GWS captain, just got out for 111 at Boxing Day test. That's a
nice.
bit of
Yeah,
weird
that's why we
trivia.
delayed this, so just so we can watch that little bit. So, but yeah, any other final thoughts as far as strategy or structure moving up?
Um, well, it always comes down to like, yeah, as we're seeing some of those preseason moves, like you always get this guy's getting more midfield time and stuff like that. But until you actually properly see it in the hit outs, that's what you kind of want to see. The main thing we're looking at now is the teams that have introduced the new players, like as in the traded players, and how that affects their role. So, for example, Richmond's a big one with like Taranto and Hopper, but how does that affect everybody else's role in there? So that's sort of
For
the
for
ones at the
every
moment.
hyped player,
Player,
for every hyped player, there's like 3 faileds.
yeah,
Do you know what I
exactly.
mean? So there's 4 hyped, 1 will succeed, 3 will fail. We look last year, everyone's like, "Oh, Taron Thomas," and then what did he do? Fall off an absolute cliff.
Cliff,
You know,
yeah. In
Phillips as
saying that,
well. I
he's a
think it was
nice
2
price,
years
isn't
ago.
he, Taron Thomas?
Well, yeah, 2 years ago, I think it was Phillips and, SC Elites was like, "Oh, Phillips will be like number 1 forward," and they made that bet with us and
Yeah,
lost horribly. But again, fell off a cliff, now delisted. So there's all of these hype things,
yeah,
right?
and you always get it with players changing.
Outside of us hyping up Petrarca.
Mhm.
But, when you look at, Butters last year, he was very hyped, but then started off well, fell off a cliff. So that would have been a bad trade in. So there's all of these scenarios where everyone's going up in average. No one's ever going down. People are like, oh, Boke's killing it. Let's get on Boke, and then falls off a cliff. Green's killing it, and then falls off a cliff. Do you know what I mean? So you're looking for that longevity. These premiums are premiums for a reason, especially ones that have done it year after year after year. Even McRae, everyone's like, oh, getting off McRae, but he still had a great year
Mm.
as far as averaging. So that's what I'm sort of looking at. Instead of trying to pick all of these breakout players, maybe just kind of, if you're going to pick one per line, knowing that you can only really be wrong 3 times.
Oh, Chris wants in. Did you see that message?
No, I
Um,
didn't.
the but that's what I'm saying. Sort of like with Dunkley. So I look at the big players. So in particular, so Dunkley going to Brisbane. What am I hearing about their structure? But then what's that affecting the Bulldogs on that? And that's why Bont and McRae are sitting there at the moment, because that's a big chunk of their midfield gone. So
Yeah.
I haven't
Hunter
heard
Dunkley.
I haven't heard anything of the Dogs changing anything up. Like, it's not like they've gone and recruited somebody to bring in that position. The other one, naturally looking at, is the injuries that are already going down. So that's the one where Ben King goes down. Okay, not Ben King, Max King
Yeah,
goes down.
Max King. Yep.
So it's like, okay, St Kilda structure. Who are they looking at bringing maybe as a extra top up player if they're not bringing anyone in? Okay, what is the news about Marshall? Where is he training because of that? So that's the kind of stuff I'm looking at the moment, because these injuries happen so early in the season, the clubs actually have time to prepare for them.
Yep.
So what they're probably practicing is what's going to happen.
And that's why we usually do the spreadsheet tracking injuries as well. I know it seems a bit mundane, but trying to pick people that haven't had an interrupted preseason. So if someone's had a surgery in the off season and they're not training again until January or end of January, then you kind of go, okay, well, they really need to show me a lot in order for me to actually kind of try and put them across the line. Um, and that's it. Just kind of keeping an eye, read everything. Clubs are trying to prop up their own players to boost memberships as well. So like, oh, this person's flying, this person's flying, this person's flying. And it's like, okay, well, you might write down, hey, from this club, these 3 people are flying. But then you watch a preseason game going, well, hang on, he's playing forward pocket and he's not actually flying. Then you just disregard everything that you said. Um, and as far as the structure, so we got, 3 premiums, 3 rookies, guns and rookies, 2, 2 and 2. So it's more your mid-price mix. But again, rookies will dictate your structure. So we've had previous years, I think the years just gone by, last year and the year before, there were no defensive rookies, or barely any that was secure. So people that went with guns and rookies really struggled because they didn't have that continuity in their rookies being able to play.
Mm.
So we end up having some years of 4 or 5 premium defenders just because there wasn't much mid-price or rookies there. And on the flip side, there are times where we just start with so many rookies in our mid prices in our forward line. We're like, okay, well, Cornelio, we didn't consider to be a mid pricer. Next minute, he's a premium. So it's like, okay, that's fine. The years where we had Zeeble and Impey, and people looking and going, hang on, you've only got 1 premium. And it's like, yes, but that's where the value is this year. And the rookies, so pretty much when you look at it, it's like, this is my structure, but feel free to throw it completely out the window, because your rookies are going to determine where you invest on field and where you actually invest those players. And then you look at the money you have left to go, okay, well, there's plenty of rookies. I'm going straight with my premium structure. There's a couple of rookies and a few mid prices I like. Then you'll go with a bit of a blend. Or if there's nothing in one line, then you just have to kind of stack it and then shift and be very flexible and fluid, and don't get yourself locked in too tight too early.
Yep.
That's it for
And
me.
then you can start playing like those premiums, and it's a good way to pick, because picking your rookies are valued and then your premiums, because then the premiums you choose is that you start looking at your buy structures and things like that. So yeah, you go, okay, I can pick in 3 midfielders. Okay, do I want to pick 1 midfielder from each? Well, now 4 buys, because of that Gold Coast buy on the separate weekend. But we can have, I might go, okay, I've got a lot of rookies or a lot of value players at the moment are sitting, say, round 12, for example. Okay, I might not want to take the primos from round 12 because that might end up mucking me up, because you see we had the players like last year, like your Dacos, and most likely this year, like your Will Ashcroft, might not be just that, upgrade target early. They become more a longevity rookie, which you hope that you might be able to take deep into the season. So,
How messed up are the buys though?
oh, they are, aren't they?
That's so tricky.
But for
Lucky,
those who
Gold
haven't
Coast and Geelong,
seen
it's
it,
fine.
so round 12, we've got Brisbane, Freo, St Kilda, and Sydney this year,
Yeah,
which
4 teams. Okay, 4
4 teams, which
teams.
is fine, which that's one that already goes, okay, is it a Lockie Neal or a Brayshaw that I don't start, because that might be the one that I upgrade as one of those last
Yeah, I
ones.
think that's dangerous though,
Um,
trying to not start because you got 11 rounds of Lockie Neal probably tearing up
that's
the
right,
front end of
that's
the
right.
year.
So it might not
And
be him, but it might
same
be
as
a but it
Steele
might
on
be a
value.
Steele, or might be a Mills and that, but
I'm leaving Sydney and Freo for the fact that maybe it'll be Mills, maybe it'll be Brayshaw. I don't think Steele will get much cheaper than that. He's starting at 600. So
yeah,
what's at best? He goes 560, 570. So I
yeah.
think you're just paying for
You're
that
paying for what
consistency.
you're getting, but am I able to get more points out of someone else before I get them in after they buy? I don't know. But yeah, the Geelong Gold Coast is by themselves in that round 13, which is going to be very interesting there. And then round 14, then we've got the full buys where you got the Crows, Pies and Demons this year, not the last buy. And then Essendon, Hawthorn, West Coast, and then round 15, the final buy, Carlton North, Port Adelaide, Richmond, Bulldogs, and the Giants. So those round 15 ones become a bit awkward, because
Oh,
by then you want full teams. And you
yeah.
see a lot of people don't have a lot of those players. It's handy North Melbourne, because you think they're going to probably struggle, even with Clarko coming on board this year. The Giants, you're probably going to think are going to struggle. New coach, have invested in a lot of young talent, so I don't see myself having a high percentage of those players, which is fine. But how many sort of Port, Richmond, Carlton, Bulldogs players do I really want to have? Because that round can really affect you. Even with the
Yeah.
best 18, you probably can have, you might have a couple, but if they're premium players and everyone else has got sort of more primos, yeah. But again, it depends how you play. We play 4 leagues, so what I finished 305 last year. Let's throw that in. But a lot of people still play for, I mean, not leagues overall, but if you play for leagues, you might just go, okay, I sacrificed one of those rounds. I couldn't care less. Let's load up on every other round. So it all depends on how
Yeah.
you play.
And the worst part is there's not even that many Suns or Geelong players that are worth having in your overall team. Like, what is it? Took, Geelong, what, Dangerfield? Or Stewart? Stewart's a good one. So Took and Stewart, I think, are probably must starts because if it's best 18, people are going to have a fully stacked side anyway. So you might
Mm,
as well have a few premiums that you miss out and play some rookies for that 1 week. I'm trying to heavily avoid people with that round 15 buy. Like not fully, but I'm just looking at McRae and probably like Taranto as the only 2 kind of keepers that I'm having from that. I would love Walsh when he comes back in. I'm not starting Cripps or anything like that. So, um, yeah, I just think it's too heavy because if you get to that last round and you're missing a lot of your players, it's going to be real tough. And even rookies, you're going to just have to hope that you trade out a rookie through these buys that happens to be playing that round. Otherwise, I'm definitely looking at trying to not front load, but have a couple in the first one, just because again, there's only 4 teams. So even if you miss out a couple of players from those teams, you can still probably field a fairly good side. Load up if like say Real starts to get some traction. I know it sounds silly, but you could go, okay, well, Real's definitely someone that could play that round, or Dangerfield if he starts having a Dangerfield like year, unlike the one that he had just gone. Um, could be a sort of option to sort of balance it out, and then looking to aggressively trade some of those other players in. And then trying to again look at Adelaide. So Laird, Collingwood, there's definitely some premiums there. Essendon's got lots of premiums. Melbourne's got lots of premiums. So I'd be trying to really, really, really use my boosts and any kind of trade sort of value I have to try and load up for round 15 and get a lot of those 14 buy players and just load up.
yeah.
I'd be going to boost for sure, loading up for that.
We're probably a little bit the first hashtag blessed in a way, for the year, because Brisbane, Freo, Sydney, Geelong, you expect those 4 teams to be up there. So having those guys with the 4 and then the 2, we're able start those players more than what we normally would. Like So yeah, able to load up on sort of the players that you know are going to be in the pointy end of the season will help. But yeah, it's just how we'll negotiate that round 15 bye. But as I said, depending on how you play, and depending on even what happens and that, injuries and things happen and that, it sometimes doesn't have to be that big of a deal. But yeah, so we'll see what happens there.
All right, well, that's it from us. We're going to go do some little segments now, looking at each line individually, premiums and cheaper options, I guess you could say, that interest us. And we'll just do some little sort of 10, 15-minute segments on those and check it out. Check out our segments. We're going to go through the new year as well, each team individually, like we have previously, looking at draft relevant players, rookies, premiums, etc. Any of that insight. And if you're interested in our spreadsheet as well, once it's done, please do hit us up. Follow us on our socials because it will be getting released into that new year once there's some more team insight. That's it from us. We'll talk to you soon. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.